Howdy there. It's time for another episode in the Chronicles of Doe is Here and my bipolar journey, I guess. Um, Things are definitely a little bit different. I, first off, have decided to wear my nice suit on top of my formal clothing. No tie, because that takes too long. But see, my reasoning behind this is to button up this entire thing. There's like 8 buttons, whereas I can do 3 and then do 2, and now magically it looks like I'm completely buttoned up, right? So the math checks out. 5 buttons instead of 8, and, a lot. Yeah. Actually, since I just looked at my finger, this is a good time to mention this. I'm curious of how many other people have this. I only had to figure this out because I looked it up, as to what this little habit is called, this condition. And I have met only a couple of people with it, and I can always identify them when I see their fingers. I have dermatillomania, and that is this kind of stuff right here. I know it's kind of hard to see, but where I pick the ever-living heck out of my fingers, and I get them looking pretty gnarly sometimes. You can see, like, I spare no blows. And the same thing does happen to my feet sometimes. A lot less often than my fingers, obviously. Because my fingers can enter my mouth and my feet can hopefully not. I mean, technically, I guess they could, but let's keep them out of there. Unless you're into that. Anyway. Yeah, I have dermatillomania. And that's self-diagnosed, so take that with a grain of salt. But it's just what I looked up, and all the little signs there seem to fit. And it's kind of do with the, like, compulsion to want to get rid of, like, blemishes and dead skin. So because the more I pick, the more skin blemish it creates, the more I keep picking. Like, when I forget to, right, and my fingers are fully healed up, I usually ain't picking at them much. Maybe a little here and there throughout the day, and that's it, and it's nothing. But once I start and it gets worse and worse, it keeps getting worse until they bleed all the time, and yeah, and it just is this whole little cycle of its own. I don't think that's caused by my bipolar disorder, because I've literally done this since I was a little kid. I don't know where I ever picked it up from. I would guess maybe because I always seen adults, like, biting their nails and stuff, and that always hurt my teeth, so I was like, what if I just bite the skin? Like, I maybe that's the logic leap there. I don't know. I don't even know if there is logic to it. It's just a little compulsion I have of, I have to do this, and it ain't like OCD where you think, or something bad's gonna happen, or there's gonna be consequences. It's just subconscious. I ain't even thinking about it. I'm just doing it. Anyway, that is beyond the point of bipolar disorder. As you can tell, things are different. My depression has definitely finally come to an end. I held off on making another, like, entry for a little bit because I was like, I don't know where I am right now. I can't really tell, but I can definitely tell now that I am out of that depression, and as I expected, out of that pretty hard depression, I'm definitely entering a pretty hard high, and that does come with its own risks, especially of fearing of a manic episode or things of the sort. But my of course, with the exit of my depression, hallucinations have gone down to virtually zero, and I finally can. I'm sleeping like 2 or 3 hours, waking up and full of energy. I'm just ready to take on the world, and I'm getting more random tasks done. It's not to say I'm necessarily getting the appropriate tasks done, but I'm just getting more random stuff done that I've been needing to get done. So I guess that's a good thing, right? Catching up, and I'm in a lot better mood. A lot more willing to talk to people. I've been hanging out with people more. Talking to my roommate. Yeah, it's just different. And you can definitely see the difference in hopefully my attitude and my behavior in terms of this entry. And you can see the comparison of when I'm in this really deep, dark space versus what I am in the other 2/3 of the time, where I'm, either neutral or in this really high up space. I'm not quite into the, haywire side yet. I'm finding it difficult to concentrate, but I wouldn't really call it a racing of the mind. I'm not sleeping not because of my mind's racing. I'm not sleeping because I just genuinely don't feel like it. Like I have too much energy. I lay there and I'm like, it ain't like I gotta go to work. What else better do I have to do? I might as well just go ahead and get up now, you know. And that's for better or for worse. But yeah, I've done nothing but sleep like the past week. So yeah, I kind of I think it's logical that I'm tired of sleeping. I want to get up and do stuff and catch up on things I've been needing to do, like filling out job applications. I've filled out a lot of job applications, and I'm being more realistic with my job applications. Whereas in my depression, I was just kind of throwing out whatever was the easiest to apply to, pretty much knowing they're not going to call me back. Not to say I don't feel like I ain't qualified to work those positions, but you get the gist. Anyway, yeah, I'm getting a lot better now, thankfully, and I'm kind of back on the up and up. And one of the things I do have to be careful for is watching my spending. Right now, I feel like I'm doing good because when I'm on the up and up, I tend to think a little more logically and make smarter decisions, especially compared to a depression. Because in a depression, I'm like, who really cares? The world sucks anyway, things like that. But when I'm kind of back to a neutral or a high, I'm thinking more about the future and like, all right, I need to save money here and do this and do that, and what can I do about getting money next month if I don't get a job in time, things like that. So definitely more controlled, more put together, and that is definitely important for my own mental health. Now, it is kind of the unique side of bipolar disorder, and this is where a lot of people struggle to want to take medication. Because keep in mind, when you take medication for bipolar 1 disorder, what they actually target is the highs, like things I'm experiencing right now. They try to get that to stop. Because if they can get that to stop, then the less the highs go up, the less depression comes down. And I don't think there's really any logical reason that people know yet as to why these are directly related to each other, but it's just they found that if they can stop the highs, they can control the lows. I don't know if maybe it's easier to control the lows because more people have depression than anything, so they got more medication for it compared to the highs, but I ain't never been on a mood stabilizer yet. We were actually going to try one before I had pretty much said I'm going to try to run for going medication free for a while and see how I can work out. Of course, last time I did that, I went into a psychosis, but this time I had all the proper support and lessons and knowledge in place now to actually make a real go of it. And I'm sober. That's the biggest part. And I've stayed sober. There's a little bit during my depression. I definitely started. It would have been dangerous had I been having any sort of easy access to that stuff, because I definitely would have started it again, without a doubt. But because I didn't have it on me and I knew I needed to save money, I didn't bother. And there was multiple days I drove by, like even the liquor store, having to convince myself each time I drive by, do not stop, keep going, do not stop, keep going, right? And it's not to say I never drink. I am sober now, but I still do social drinking. I do feel that's kind of different in tone to like sitting at home and binge drinking all day versus sharing a social drink or two with friends. That is two completely different like avenues to me, and that doesn't violate my sobriety to me because it's just a formality. It's just a social networking key, not meant for really my own enjoyment. It's just meant for loosening up the room and getting people to, vibe a bit better. Yeah, so that's where I am right now. Like I said, on the up and up, feeling great, loving it. I have finally started muscling through working on one of my big things is on one of the games I play. My avatar was completely wrecked because I had done it over the course of years. Now it's been years, and I had never optimized it as I did it for the most part. So it was just completely totaled. I mean, it got to the point that even if I made one little small change, I had to redo immense amount of work to get that small change to work. And I tried to make one of those small changes earlier in the week, completely broke the entire thing. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I could sit and waste time redoing this again for like the next 4 or 5 hours to get it to work. Or I could go ahead and just bite the bullet. I have no job right now anyway, and redo everything to work properly. And so that way in the future, when I want to add stuff, it's now a matter of, 2 hours instead of, 2 hours and then possibly 8 because I break everything. So yeah, definitely a lot better now. I did that. I started on that at like, I want to say 3 or 4 yesterday, and I did it. I worked on it all the way until about 8:30 to 9 this morning, and then I slept 2 hours and got back up, and I've been writing my day since. Um, Good example of kind of the energy boost and the exact opposite of what the depressions look like in bipolar disorder. And what I feel is kind of funny is sometimes I am realizing people are exaggerating their sleep, but rest assured, I'm not exaggerating how little or how much sleep I'm getting. It is true, and I know this because I have documented before to prove to myself that I'm not losing my mind thinking I've only slept, this many hours, or I have slept too many hours. I guess it don't really do much for you, does it? There ain't no proof for you. You're not gonna watch me sleep, so you're not gonna see the proof. Anyway, yeah, just it's different. It's definitely different. I'm loving it though, and oh yeah, this comes back to what I was gonna say earlier, but I lost my train of thought. I warned about this before actually about how during my higher ups, you'll see me start on a thing and just move. When people with bipolar disorder and they're trying to get it treated, since they're targeting the highs, well, what sucks about that is the highs are not the bad part, usually. For the most part, the highs are kind of a euphoric welcome feeling. It's almost like a high, and because of that, it does turn a lot of people away from medication, because some of the more common things you'll hear is it makes me, dull, not creative, zombie. And the reason that that feeling is there is because now these amazing highs are gone. And so now all the motivation that we used to getting at this sudden rush and just like a punch in the wind, poof, gone to the wind. And now you feel like a zombie. And it is really weird to me because I remember when I was on a Lanzapine, actually, fun side effect about Lanzapine. I thought about this earlier, and that's actually what made me want to start recording this. I had this really... Was it a Lanzapine? I think it was. I had this really weird side effect. No, it was Seroquel. Yeah, Seroquel. I had this really weird side effect where, for some reason, my neck was like hypersensitive. And I don't know why. I think it was just a psychological thing. But for some reason, I could not stand anything touching my neck. I wear a necklace 24/7, always. Okay, and I wore this shortly before my OD. It was supposed to be a reminder to myself to, like, think about your life, think about the future, and stop worrying so much. But anyway, it is a pentagram. No, not an occultism. Occultism is if you flip it upside down. This is harmony if you keep it right side up. And for me, it kind of... I use it for both purposes. I'm not religious, but some of the values I do take in is from like Buddhism, especially in the form of karma. I do heavily believe in the idea of karma, even if it violates all logic to me at some times. I will follow the reasoning of karma before I apply logic really to anything. A good example is like there was multiple times at my previous job where there's no cameras, I have little money, and I'm hungry. And there's food in the back. Plenty of it. Expired, too. I could go back there and eat it, and no one really notice or even throw a fit. But because I believed in karma so heavily, even though all the logic says I could do it and it'd be just fine and nobody would really care, the karma to me just says I can't do it. Because no matter how hungry I am, me doing that is kind of a direct insult to doing the right thing. And if I do that, then bad things will happen to me, and I know it. And again, that violates all logic. And I feel like that's kind of the whole thing of religion. Religion is logicless for most part. I don't care how many people it irritates. It's true. A lot of times there is no logic in religion. It's there to fill the emotional gaps that logic can't give us. Like after death and stuff, that it's just there to fill in that void. Anyway, I wear this necklace and harmony, right? And so my whole message of why I always wear it is I am in harmony while around me is hell. And that is kind of why I love the pentagram, because all I gotta do is flip it upside down and it represents the hell I feel sometimes, or that's around me, or things like that, or what I see people go through. Wow, I just went on a whole rant. I don't even remember the main topic at hand. Oh, yeah. So, I forgot it again. I forgot again. The whole point of making this video, there was one thing I wanted to say, and I forget. Shoot. We'll take a drink. One second. That's Diet Sam's Cola. They were selling that for $1 a bottle, $1 or 2 liter. And I was like, oh heck yeah, I'm gonna grab a couple of those because I love diet soda. Only thing I'll let it drink besides water is diet soda. And you know, for that cheap, if I had a job right now, I would have bought out the whole freaking store. I promise you. No, I would have had a lifetime supply in my apartment right now. Yeah, things are feeling a whole lot better. Shoot. I have no clue what I was about to say. I went on this whole tangent about my stupid necklace instead of what I wanted to say, and now I'm so irritated because I wanted to, like, is the whole point of me recording this. And then what's gonna happen later is I'm gonna, like, end this video and I'm gonna remember it and be kicking myself in the butt being like, oh, I need to say this next time, and I never say it anyway. That's inevitably what happens. I can't believe I just talked my way out of what I was going to say. I thought for sure I'd remember. But yeah, in terms of karma, it is something I do heavily believe in. And maybe it's kind of what you'd call a religion for me. I don't believe in a god or anything like that. But I would like to believe that there is a form of afterlife. Now, there is no scientific proof of that, and, you know, if somebody asks me, I will tell them that while I hope there is, realistically, I don't believe there is. But, you know, does that stop me from trying to sit in a room and talk to dead relatives? No, it don't. Right? I still do it just because it's an emotional comfort thing. You know, and there's no shame in emotional comfort at all. So, you know, do what you gotta do. Shoot. I'm like having all the, I guess I do get kind of racing to the mind right now that I think about it. I'm having like, I'm trying to envision what I was going to say. I guess I could always pause this real quick and go back and figure it out. But I make a point to not have to pause. Like, that is something I don't enjoy doing. Especially since I'm just using OBS and I don't think you can pause on OBS. You just have to outright stop, and I'm not using a video editor to stitch it together. I can promise you I don't have the patience for that. So, yeah. In terms of job searching, I mean, I'm still just hitting a brick wall. Really am. I'm trying. And I pre-warned my roommate, you know, we had to talk about, like, what's next month might gonna look like at this point. I was like, I don't know. I really don't know. If I can't get a job, I'll be lucky to make half. Yeah. Now, what is interesting about a lot of people with bipolar disorder is there's actually 2 interesting fun facts. First one, sexuality. So when it comes to people with bipolar disorder, they have found, and by they I just mean, you know, academic writings. So whoever produces the academic writings, because I never look, okay. But academically, it's been found that a shocking amount of those individuals often display a sense of of elevated sexuality, and often become kind of nympho, for lack of a better word, you know, addicted to this sort of reckless chasing of gratification in that way. And I'm definitely no different from that. I am definitely part of that statistic. And it is always something weird I think about. Sometimes I'm like, you know, I'm sitting and thinking like, am I doing this because I want to, or is this just part of the disorder? Is it just I think I want to? And I think it's both, honestly. But it's just an interesting little thought. And on top of that, interesting thing that tends to happen with people with bipolar disorder. I don't know if it's so true in bipolar 2 as much as bipolar 1 is money. Um, a lot of people tend to struggle with money a lot because they get reckless. And when they're in those reckless phases, especially during like manic episodes, you can justify a purchase even with no money to spare because in your head it just makes sense. Like, this is the next big thing. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be set. The world's going to take care of me. And you'll just spend this money willy-nilly. And I am not immune to that. I've showed my friends before times where I've realized I've gone into a manic episode or I'm getting there because all of a sudden I'll look at my bank account and it is just draining. I'm like, whoa, what in the world's happening here? And I'll start looking at my transaction history and realize what I'm doing is micro spending over and over and over and over and over again, not realizing it. So like, I'll go to place A and be like, oh, I could afford $5 worth of this. And I'll go to place B, oh, I can afford $6 here. And then I'll be on the way home, oh, I could get a small little meal for like $7 from this fast food place. And then by the time I get home, I've spent $30 or $40 over my budget because I wasn't even paying attention. For me, it's all just justified cost right there. I'm not thinking about it. And do this over the course of a week or two, and suddenly you have a $200 to $300 less in your account than you anticipated because you've just spent it all on things you didn't even remember getting or even give you any note in your day. It was just a part of life that day. And it is very annoying. It is so very annoying to do that stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've had a savings and then completely emptied that stupid thing from doing that kind of stupid stuff. A good example, actually, I have it in my closet still and I never use it. For some reason, I had this fascination with Elite Dangerous. And for me, it was like, this is it. This is the next big game. This will be the future. Even though this game's really old and nobody really plays it much anymore. I don't know if that's true or not. Actually, I think they still have a pretty decent player base. But, you get the point, okay? And I had invested hundreds into this whole, Thrustmaster setup. And if you've played Elite Dangerous, you may know what I'm talking about. I forget the name of it off of my head, but it's Thrustmaster. And I had this whole setup I just burnt all my money on. And I had just lost my job at the time. And I definitely didn't have the money for this. But I was so convinced this is what I needed that I bought it all. And I used it once. I used it once and then never touched it again. It's been in my closet since. And I'm so mad about it because it is so cool. Like, honestly, you slap on a VR headset, you plug that stuff in, it does feel awesome. But as much as I like Elite Dangerous, honestly, it kind of suffers from, it's so big that it's almost a void of nothing to do. Because there's so many things you could do that there's no reason to do everything because it's already been done, is kind of how you feel. And I feel like they don't really have many ways to alleviate that, of this lack of motivation for new players because, you're facing people that's had years of experience in PvP, people with way more money and way more gear and way more everything, all these logistics. You're competing with giants while you are just one individual and without a clan to support you. Good luck. And trying to get a clan, I don't know. I've never tried. I don't even really understand how to work the chat system. I never bothered learning. I just understood how to fly the ship and go do mining operations and stuff. But yeah, good example of when I spent a lot of money on something really stupid and really, really needed the money, and then I didn't have it, and I had to take out a loan to cover my bills. Yeah, that was so stupid. But it's a good example of what happens during these highs, of you get so caught up in these impulsive thoughts and behaviors that you just don't realize the damage you're doing to yourself till it's too late. And it happens to those around you too, and it can cause a lot of drama, especially if you're in a relationship or something, of people not understanding why are you doing these things. Why are you completely blowing every dime you have? And they just, if you could answer that question, you wouldn't be doing it either, right? That's kind of the answer of you don't know just as much as they don't know. You just are, because it makes sense at the moment. So not to be confused with people that are just bad at money. Okay, there's a difference, and you can observe that difference. Sorry, I just caused an earthquake. Anyway, when you look at a bank account and you can see like patterns, okay, randomly here and there of this high spending and then no spending, high spending, no spending, that may suggest that it's disorder related. Now, if you look at somebody's bank account and it's Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, freaking Amazon Plus, or is it Amazon Plus? Amazon, whatever. Anyway, it's all these things, fast food, DoorDash, all these things. You can probably take an assumption that actually these people are just bad at money, and there's the disorder ain't affecting it. They just genuinely suck at money. And my mother's one of those people. No offense to my mother, but her and her financial stability is none. Like I can't tell you how many times I have handed her money to then see her buy fast food. And oh my goodness, if you've ever wanted to throw somebody through a brick wall, that is a quick way to do it. When they say they have no money, you give them money, and now they have KFC. Wow. Like, wow. And my sister's the same way on that. Like, them two are a pea in the pod on money, I swear. I think my sister's worse. Well, no. I think my mother's worse in terms of the whole problem, because she's in way, way, way more debt. But both of them are the same when it comes to money. You cannot hand them $1 without knowing they're going to do something stupid with it. And, I swear they could be living in a cardboard box. You hand them $1 million and tell them, go live the rest of your life. And in 2 months, they will have eaten $1 million worth of fast food. Like, it's going to happen. And maybe that's insulting to say about your own family, but they're my family and I'm allowed to insult them. And that is true of them. They really suck with money. Yeah. Can't tell you how many times I've had to bail them out of financial holes before I finally just cut them off. And I was like, look, I feel my phone buzz, but I don't know where it is. Oh, it's in front of me. And I'm like, I'm not bailing you out anymore. You're on your own. I'm done. My sister definitely had that cut off not long ago. She owed me money and magically never paid a dime. Not a dime. My mother's done that too, and that's why I ended up cutting her off on money. I paid her $800 to get her out of an eviction, and we had this whole written agreement about how she was going to pay me back. And to this day, I don't even think she's paid half. And that was well over a year ago. Yeah, I know I've come to settle I'm never going to see that money again. Heck, just the week before I left, she asked for $20 because she needed it, and I gave her the 20. And she's like, oh, I'll pay you back before you leave, I promise. I've been gone now for like 3 weeks, and I've not seen that money. So, it's all kind of the same things. I know I just said, oh, I cut her off on money, and I gave her $20 anyway. For me, it was such a minute little, like, $20. I'm just going to use it to prove a point, right? So that way, during the next time she asks for money, I'll be like, where's my 20 that you were supposed to hand me back? I feel guilty about bringing up the 800, because despite the fact the deal was she owed me that money back, at the same time, she's my family, she was going to get evicted, and on top of that, I was living with her at the moment, so in trade of me paying that 800, eventually, since she was not able to pay me back at all, I stopped paying rent to recoup that loss. So technically speaking, I definitely recouped that loss long ago, if we want to count it that way. So I don't bring that up because I'm like, that's kind of a logistics nightmare. Technically, I've recouped it, but that's simply out of me then refusing to hand you money. So does that really count? I don't know. But, yeah. Now the 20, No, that one I'm gonna be using as ammo. I'm gonna be like, next time she messages me for money, I'm gonna be like, where's my 20? You never give me that back, so you're still in debt to me. And while you're in debt to me, I can't hand you any money. So I guess you're out of luck. And yeah, and it doesn't help none. Her husband is just. You think she's bad with money? You should see her husband. Her husband is a revolving door of what comes in goes right back out. There is no such thing as savings to that man. I am not even sure he understands the concept of what a bank account is actually meant to do, which is hold the money. He don't even need a bank account. They could pay him in cash and he'd be set for the entire day it takes him to spend it all. So, yeah, they are just bad with money. My dad was always the same way of, I don't really talk about my dad much. That's probably not a YouTube appropriate story. But he was just as bad as my mom's husband is on money. Revolving door. I mean, in and out, in and out. And on top of that, his dietary standards, none. He had lots of medical problems because of how bad his diet was, and how bad his hygiene was, and how bad he lived. He's been long since dead now. He died in 2019, 3319, so March 3rd of 2019 is when he was gone. But yeah, he was. Now, in fairness, he had more problems than just being bad at money. Like, he was one heck of a person. Let me say that much. I am the polar opposite of him in almost every way. Like, everything I do is the opposite of what he did. And that's because I grew up deciding I was not going to be like his ass and did all the opposite things. God forbid you ever see him wear something like this. He would never. I really, really hate to use offensive terms, especially in a public setting. But there's this term I'm going to use because it's my dad and I'm allowed to. Or at least was my dad. He's like ash and bones now. Well, no, just ash. Anyway, which is trailer trash. And that's a very offensive term, especially when you use it on somebody that shouldn't be getting it used on. Because you live in a trailer, don't make you trailer trash. There's plenty of really awesome people, heck, even wealthy people, that live in trailers. Trailers are awesome. There's nothing wrong with them. Okay? But we can all think of somebody, probably, at least if we haven't seen somebody, we know of somebody, or, in our head we can think of it, that would definitely classify as trailer trash. And that was my dad. But he didn't live we lived in a trailer for a little while I was a kid, but he must have lived in apartments. But he was just trailer trash. He followed that mentality to a T. He would never wear formal clothing. All of his clothes were stained, always. He would never buy new clothing. He would never save money. He would spend every single dime he's ever gotten. He would not work. He stayed on welfare. He lived off the government. I mean, he checked all the boxes for trailer trash. And there's a difference between willingly living like that and not having a choice. Okay? I hate to say everybody who lives off the government and draws food stamps and all is trash. That's not even close to true. There's reasons it's there. But he was not one of those. There was no reason he couldn't work. He just decided when I was a baby, he wasn't going to anymore. He said he's retiring. And true to his word, he stuck to it. He found a doctor that gave him a false diagnosis for his back and kept eroding that until it eventually became true, really. And yeah, that was how he chose to live his life. And, it caught up to him eventually in the end. But, yeah, he stayed that way as long as I ever got to know him. 18 years of my life that I got to know him. That was how he lived. And he was a horrible, drug addict, too. He was bad into drugs. And not the drugs that make you skinny. His big thing was oxys. He loved those oxys. And I don't get why. Because the entire time he slept. And if he opened his eyeballs, God help whatever soul was next to him. But otherwise, he slept. Always. He did not get up and do anything. He lived a very sedentary style. And he slept in his chair always. And I ain't going to go into much more about him. But based on what I said, A, you can conclude why he had such bad health. And B, I'm sure you can draw in some figures as to maybe what kind of person he was growing up, and why I think I'm entitled to be able to insult him how I see fit. Now, it's not to say I didn't love my dad, though. It was still my dad, and yeah, I loved him. Despite the fact the entire world pretty much hated him, I did still love him, and I tried to be there for him as long as I could till he decided I couldn't, right? In way of his death. So yeah, that's a bit of backstory about my dad. Actually, about 5 minutes left here, but it feels like it's been like 5 minutes of me talking at all. There's still this whole topic I started where I was supposed to say what I wanted to at the beginning, and I completely forgot, and I still don't remember. So I'm sure I actually already covered it. But yeah, that's about all I got for you. Thanks for listening. Hope maybe this one was a bit more cheerful and interesting than the other 2 entries. I don't even know if anybody ever watches them. I don't, that's for sure. Again, I find these so boring. I don't know how anybody would watch these, but in the future, they will be helpful to me because as I can document more cycles, I can get a better idea of like the length of how long my cycles are actually lasting without having a rough idea in my head. And on top of that, it helps for future documentation, especially if I need to humor certain medication or need to show certain friends maybe what certain things look like of being able to pull up this content and being able to reference it later and see what I'm talking about in that moment about bipolar disorder. Okay, anyway, I'm going to start ranting again if I don't hurry up. So, adios. Thanks for listening. And I hope you enjoy your weekend, because I sure will.